Hi, friends. Okay, this journal is from 8/1, and the Mayan day was 5 Flint, pretty much in the middle of the Tracina. Okay, tips and tricks time. Okay, how many of you are getting it that it's the little things? We've had the big stuff jammed down our throats for so long, and we've been made out to be little and inconsequential ourselves. Yet now we begin to see how that's all quite backwards, don't we? I know I do, and I hope you do. Lately, I've stressed a time or two how it's the journey itself that is the point of life. Are you grokking that? Do you get it? And what does it mean to you? If it's not crystal clear, then I'd spend some heart time with it. If it is crystal clear, then spend some heart time with it. And yes, I repeated. Why? Because it's time for us to start second guessing the mind. Always. And when you get it, that it's the journey itself, that's the point, that centers you in now, that releases you from all that stuff in the future that your mind may have you working toward. All right, don't trust what your mind has to say to you or to anyone. You don't have to go out and do the work to develop some humility either. You can find it ready-made in heart. It's your natural, divine state. It's that emptiness. No, of course it doesn't make sense to the mind, but that's a good thing. The journey is the point, not any destination. And that means any kind of a shift, any kind of an ascension, any kind of an anything. You know, if we spend a few moments and consciously just let go of that, it's really cool. I mean, it kind of shakes us up inside because a lot of us have so much of our interior castle built around those kind of things. And they're not real because they have to do with time. If the only thing between you and something is time, then that's not real because you're everywhere, everywhen now. Do stay in heart. Okay, one destination in the midst of infinity and eternity will just give way to another. Do you see? So why focus on that? It doesn't make heart sense. Go within. As we find ourselves more and more inside, instead of riding on the surface of things, there with mind, we'll be soaking up what could be called higher vibrations or frequencies. We'll be well placed to be easily touched by Source and Higher Self, or our spiritual guides for that matter. And we'll also be planted in Intuition Central. It's quite ideal. In the kingdom of heart that I speak of, there are many gems and treasures of the eternal kind, things that go with you from one lifetime to another, real treasures. And, you know, I'm sure you can see that. So, what are they? Go inside and have a look. When you go within, you'll get used to the shift in vibration you'll make. Your frequency overall will rise. Now, you won't likely notice it at first, it being so strange and all, but at some point you will. Right now, I'm seeing a little notepad and a pen or pencil in someone's hand. This is a good suggestion to make, since When you get into higher consciousness and something is shared with you, there's no guarantee you'll remember it when returning to regular beta brainwave or everyday state. Write it down. Take just a few little notes, no big deal. Now that's just a word to the wise. You don't have to, of course, but I'll use it to take a short detour here to point something out. Most of us are familiar with someone or several who once had a peak experience in meditation or prayer or whatever, someone who now spends the rest of their life chasing after a repeat of that. People will commonly say how they had it, but then they lost it. Going to seminars, gurus, and teachers for the answer. Now, perhaps that even happened to you. Be in heart with it, and let's look at this another way. Try out our heart vision. I hope you already know that we're all multidimensional, so own it. Since the fourth dimension can be called duration or time-space, we're already in that one. Plus, these higher states we reach sometimes, those are not in 3D. I'll guess and say 5D, and maybe even higher at times. Not much, though. So, while our bodies remain present and visible here in 3D, we're not always only in 3D. Often, our consciousness is in higher dimensions. Actually, it is all the time, but I mean consciously. So you can be in several dimensions at once and interact from all of them. If you can't accept that as a belief just yet, then just allow that maybe it's possible. What I have to share about this is really very simple. When we're in a really high state and we have a special experience there, that's where it's recorded. At that frequency, the experience is tied in to that level of frequency or consciousness. When we return to our everyday working state, which for almost everyone is the beta brainwave state, it's likely that we won't remember that much of our experience. What I'd like to suggest is that it's still there for us. When we rise back up in consciousness, that memory will be accessible. That's where it's recorded, and it's native to that state. You know how there are many things that, while they make sense to heart, make not a bit of sense to the mind? This is something like that. Certain things are not designed to translate well into lower levels of consciousness. Heart frequency is higher than mind. Now, do stay in heart with this. See the simplicity, the heart or higher logic of it. I'm quite convinced that one day we'll have the higher and higher physics yet. Once we readmit consciousness into the mix, that will help explain the simple mechanics of such things. They're really quite simple when seen from heart. You can also see now how those people who spend all their effort in search to repeat the mountaintop experience are just pretty much fooling themselves. They're also on a fool's mission. Never chase after the past, just on general principles. Yet, it can also be seen that they will never find what they seek, since they don't know what they're doing. Yet until they surrender the attachment to that experience, they'll go on chasing their tail, so to speak. Okay, back to my original track about how it's the little things and the journey itself that are primary, not any endpoint or conclusion. Those two are just illusory. If we stay in heart, we won't get off track like that. Heart has its own special logic that really works. Okay, what is the littlest little thing? Isn't it right what's there in front of you now? The next step, the next word on the page, that itch on your nose, are these not the ultimate little things? Sure. What else they also are is your now. Take just a moment and lock this one in. Now is the ultimate little thing. Now is your precise spot in the journey. In that journal on the hop, we saw how now is also precisely what the powers that were have worked so hard to keep from us. There seems to be a plot to keep us anywhere but here, any when but now. The awesome now here, that is the cosmic NowHere. Oh, how I love that one. So, let's take a closer look to see just what it is they work so hard to keep as far away from us as possible. What is it they're trying to hide, do you think? Have you ever pondered this? It would make a great pondering focus for a meditation. What is at the heart of any now? Clearly, if the powers that were are so focused on keeping it away from us and us away from it, it must be something pretty darn special, huh? Let's check it out. What do you find there in your now moment? Are you in heart? Be sure to stay put there. I'm noticing in many of the comment threads on my videos how many of you are more inward focused than you were before. I'm sure you've noticed it too, at least I hope you have. This is a key you have to find and use before you can spend any serious time within. An outward focus is nothing but a total distraction, an occupied mind, hamster wheeling along. So, you're better now, maybe much better, at keeping your focus on self, within. Along with that, you've probably dropped a good deal of attachment to the things of 3D life. You've done some surrendering. You've rearranged some priorities. What kept you occupied before just isn't that interesting now, isn't that important. Get the sense of that. Notice it in your life. It's good to notice your progress. Claim it, own it. As long as you stick to heart with it, there's no concern of ego creeping in. Now back to the now moment and just being with it. What do you find? Did you take the 20-second test yet? Clark's video is a great help, but you can use any 20 seconds you like anywhere. Meditators, by the way, often set a little meditation chime or alarm. You're not being empty if you're watching a second hand or a clock. Just for future reference. There are free little chime apps available that you set for just how many seconds or minutes and then let it go, trusting them to gently bring you back. Hey, I told you up front this would be tips and tricks, right? So even if it's just 10 seconds at a shot, it's really great to practice clearing your mental space. 10 seconds with no input, no output, just nothing. That's the goal. Get to where you can do that easily and often. And you see, once you train the self, you'll have that out of the way. And the thing is, with the meditation chime, if you're sitting there counting those 10 seconds, your mind is there. So by having the little chime, it's just so nice to just set it and then not worry about clocks. One thing this does is highlight just how much the brain is overactive. It just won't shut up. Now, until you notice this, it won't change. Now hear this. We are not fighting the mind. We are just watching it. If things pop up, we simply notice them and then look away. Just like a link you don't choose to click, you just leave it alone. No fighting, no resisting, just noticing. Big difference. Okay, sweeties, what we're doing here is playing with and in our now. We're practicing occupying that. If you get frustrated, just notice it. Let it be a link you don't click, but only observe. See, John is frustrated there. He doesn't feel happy right now. This is occupying your now, John. Just notice. Don't feed the thing. In other words, don't believe it. Don't trust the output of the mind. Little children don't do well when their space is restricted. Some can sit quietly for a bit, but some need to move about, and that's okay. As long as you stick to your now, you can allow your little child to skip around in circles or figure eights. In other words, just be gentle with you. No pushing, no forcing, or self-abuse of any kind. Only love is practiced in heart. Anything else and you'll find yourself instantly out of heart space, and you'll soon see what is meant, if you haven't already. So, like a little child, we keep skipping right back into the center, back into heart. We just know there's a playground here somewhere, and we're determined to discover it. So, stick with me and stick with your heart. If you find yourself in mind, no big deal. Just skip right back into heart in a jiffy. You're already there as soon as you set the intent, and just keep doing that with no frustration, but a gentle touch. You may have drilled more deeply down into your now than you ever have here, or than you have in a little while. Just gently be persistent. You, being divine, have set your intent to occupy heart, and by golly, there's no one and nothing that can gainsay you. You will get what you want, for you can always have this. Are you beginning to sense the sacredness here? You soon will. If not today, then very soon, if you set your intent and just make time for it. Choice points. You'll be using more and more of your choice points now. When we determine to stay within heart, we start using a lot of them. When you first start on the spiritual path, the choice points that you use are spaced far apart. You may go days without remembering to say that prayer or meditate or chant or whatever it is. In the beginning, it may even be weeks. No big deal. It's just natural. I say this now just to point out how, as you move along on this road of choice points, they get closer together. You may have many of them in one day. It's not that they weren't there before, of course. It's just that we don't initially notice them very often. We're in sleeple mode when we start. And again, that's perfectly fine. Always remember, it just is what it is. No big deal, no matter what it is. We practice acceptance. How are you doing about staying in your now with me here? No doubt some stray thoughts have been making their way in, and I hope that is through, not just in. Let them float right on out, and they will if you persist in returning your attention back into heart. Just stubbornly, beautifully persist. Nothing can stop you. Remember, you're divine. Now, this is likely too long to expect a lot of you to remain centered in heart with me. But I can tell you, I'm sensing quite a lot of you doing that. The in and outing is fine. Truly, that doesn't matter a bit. Don't let it distract you. The point is to just notice and then return focus to heart. Only that. Very simple, uncomplicated. Okay, my friends, I'll bring it to a close, but I want you to pay attention to the center of your chest before I stop. Does it feel a bit warm? Do you get any sensations from it? It may be physical or not. It may be anything. But likely, as you persist in simply focusing there, it will begin to feel rather wonderful. Now, this is where using words gets pretty tricky. You see, heart is a deeply sacred space. It's like being in a cathedral. When we first start visiting here, we don't generally notice that. We're still too mind-occupied and trained to be able to bring all of our focus here, or anywhere. We're typically mind-scattered. And remember, no self-criticism of any kind, only love. Handle the beautiful self with kid gloves. You're worthy of that. This kingdom of heart you hear me speak so much about, it's really something that words can't even touch. And so are you. Right now, you are present on maybe all of the dimensions in cosmos. You're in superposition simply everywhere, but not consciously, of course. Not yet. Just know that you are. What we're doing here is to gather up as much of your focus as possible, as much as you can muster, and center that now here. At first, it will be precious little. That is, unless you're a practiced meditator. Then you could likely give me lessons, and that would be fine too. What we're talking about can be called presence with the capital P. It's how much of you, the real you can gather together into conscious awareness. Do you realize that? Remember how earlier we spoke of how mountaintop states store up the experiences we have there, and how they are not accessible from good old 3D consciousness? That represents a sort of scattering of our forces. Do you see? It's all you. It's just here and there, not all together. Well, by being true and loyal to the now, to just being in one now moment, you have the chance to truly gather yourself, to truly meet and get to know yourself. This is literally to expand consciousness. I don't know if you're seeing it yet. Stay with me and be still. The conscious awareness is usually very limited, as we've discussed. It doesn't even touch the subconscious, the unconscious, the superconscious, much less other dimensions. Well, in the now, we can alter that. I'd like you to see your now as the most sacred, the most central part of your wholeness, of your life, of your lives, really. It's the central point of you that you have access to here. Feel into that, in the now, which I also often say as being in heart. You can access the self in superposition. Do you know what that means? It means you are simultaneously everywhere. Whether it's dimensions or lifetimes or higher self or spiritual guides or perfect equanimity, peace, and joy. This is the touch point for all of that. Now here. When you're now here, you're nowhere or everywhere. This is where you discover you're not really just human at all. This is where you link up with Source and with everything. This is that point that once you make the deep connection, you will never want to leave it again. And you will feel it. It's subtle, but it can be sensed. Once you're not so scattered anymore, you'll find it quite easy to sense, though maybe not just yet. This is the heart of cosmos. This is also the heart of Source, of God. This is your inner temple, your kingdom of heart. You will meet your own Christ consciousness here. That is the one who sits on the throne in your inner kingdom. That one is you, but it takes some time to clean up the belief garden and such things to both make way for and to honor that. As I said, it's tremendously sacred, and so are you. You likely don't know that yet, but you are very sacred. You are Source in form, sacred form. While I hesitate to do this, I will offer a peek into what you will find in this sacred space. It is sacred. You are sacred. As you take up heart vision while here, you will one day look on the whole world with new eyes and be shocked. Where before you saw only hardness and hardship, war, cruelty, and terrible things that stirred you into unpleasant states? No. It's too much to ask of my words to convey anything of this. Just know that your former vision is unworthy, is not pure. From within, you can access the eyes of Source, which see shockingly differently than yours do. It's just not comparable at all. So, while it will be likely only the mind that will hear this at this time, I will give you the hint that if you persist in being present in heart, one day see in the world the self-same sacredness you experience in heart. It can't be explained, and I won't even try. This is the sort of things the masters of old would have hidden from all but their best disciples. This knowledge is sacred. Do what you can to see that mind doesn't mishandle it. Just try not to think about it. It's to be experienced, not thought of. Instead, my friends, just be present. Always present within. There are no words sufficient to carry this sacredness. For this, we leave words behind, going strictly within, and we don't chit-chat about it either. We hold it sacred the best way we can. You often hear me say, I'll ponder something in heart. You can safely hold in heart that which isn't suitable to be held in mind. Rather than using mind to think about something, I will drop it down into heart, where I can ponder it. That means I don't take my thoughts in there with me to handle it. Thoughts are not pure enough to touch that which is sacred. Do you see? You can safely ponder this within. Wow, what a journal. I am humbly amazed. Namaste.